with a kind of spiritual unity on these plantations, on these quilombos, and it was lived. Life was lived there as though it was an African village, an African place. That is what they reconstructed, and all of the quilombos and the combos and what have you, they were structured in that fashion. So they were living, they were not hiding from Europeans. They were living their African lives like African people. And the other thing too, something we have to take note, after a while, they had women, children, everybody. They began to be economically self-sufficient. That was something. They did not depend on the outside. They manufactured and did their various things, and they were, in fact, producing stuff, producing goods that was taken to the markets. And when they went to the markets, the other thing is this, with Kojo and the others, they would mingle with the Africans that were there, whether they were enslaved or not. And they couldn't tell, naturally, the man couldn't tell the difference. And so you had among a lot of enslaved people who were on the plantations, there were Maroons who were there, who were moving about. And they were quick to be able to get those people who were at the market to come with them. If somebody spotted them, they would immediately group together and they would attack wherever the attack came from. They could attack and then move up. Many Africans were taken from the plantations, taken from while they were being auctioned off, then they were brought straight into the encampments, the quilombos. And that's a thing that they did. In the same way Tubman would go down and the others would take Africans up to Canada. It's the same way they would go into the plantations. They would go wherever the Africans and take them away and bring them up to these places where they lived. So they were not thinking of building a quilombo to last a few months or so. They were building it to live, because they knew at the time this was going to be their Africa. And it is this kind of attitude, this kind of mentality, this kind of approach, this African approach, that in fact our ancestors lived, and is something that we need to learn from. What really one could say about the most successful one of them all? Although we look at the one at Palmares, but when you talk about the Maroons, the people that really succeeded, you can think of the Haitian Revolution. It's the one that comes to mind, because that revolution shook the whole of this hemisphere, It shook the plantation owners in the South. It shook people in New York, everywhere in the Caribbean, in France, everywhere. In fact, it affected Napoleon so much, the great Napoleon, that he was prepared to, at one time he had said in Haiti that any French woman that had an affair with a black man should be sent back to France. Well, they should have sent all of them away anyway. Don't even wait for no one. They should have sent them away to begin with. They were not necessary down there. But after a while, when he got defeated and beaten, he gave an edict to his brother-in-law, General Leclerc, and later to Rochambeau, allow French women to marry African men and vice versa, so that the island could be, France could get a control. Let it be like that, and eventually we will be able to retake the island. He didn't want, you see what he was doing? Now when we say that the man likes to throw in his wife, his sister, his anybody, and put it before our ball players and and other people who have that kind of frame of mind, we'd say, oh, you think it's not true, but it's true. Napoleon was prepared to do that from the beginning. It only shows you the great Napoleon wanting to do that. And then later on will come along, when they think, oh, they're Frenchmen and they're having our women and so on, which in fact, I'll go into that a little deeper if I have some time, which in fact happened to a certain extent. But however, what Napoleon wanted more than ever was not to lose Haiti, not to lose it at all. And the whole struggle, the whole history of Haiti, there's one of the Maroons, the warriors, the kind of thing. There is. Yeah, fit. And if it was not for men like that, who Toussaint was smart enough when they started the fighting to get some Maroons from the mountains to come down and help, because they were brilliant in guerrilla warfare. They knew how to fight. And Toussaint got them down, many of them to come down and join with the brothers and sisters from the plantations. And it was these men, together with the brothers and the sisters, that gave France the beating that it got. To talk about the Haitian Revolution, one always remembers Toussaint. His name is always being pushed about, and they talk about him. But he was not really the leader in the sense of having won the revolution. The man who really they should talk about is Jean-Jacques Dessalines. He was the man who brought victory. Toussaint was not even there. Through his own fault, he wasn't there. And through the kind of mind that many of our African brothers, or I should say our Negro brothers, have, the belief that Toussaint could speak French. He had been educated, he had been brought up, educated to a point by a French, his plantation owner. He was happy, he was friendly with the priest, and so he believed he was French, and he believed also he was a Roman Catholic. These were the things that helped to cause Toussaint to be taken away, arrested, and for him to lose the revolution and let Dessalines continue with it and win. Because had he not had that frame of mind, he would never have succumbed to the trick they played him. They played one of their nasty tricks on him, as they always do to our people. They call them and promise them something. The lesson is 200 years. It is still here today. Remember that lesson, the lesson of Toussaint. Toussaint died in a prison in the mountains of Jouet in France, in a cold prison. That leader was left there, and they found him dead in his room when they came to wake him up one April morning in a cold room in those mountains. And that should not have happened to him. Had he had the mind of Dessalines, had he had the mind of Christophe, that would never have happened to him. In other words, he thought, like a lot of our people do, that they are American, they're Barbadian, they're Dominican, they're whatever, and they do not know where their loyalties are. Dessalines knew here his loyalties were. They knew those bookmen, they knew, nobody had to tell them. And perhaps it was a good thing that they didn't have the modicum of education that Toussaint had. Perhaps, and sometimes, as Carter G. Woolson said, this miseducation can be very dangerous. Right. And it has shown itself to be dangerous here. That is why we go about divided. Right. That is why some of us, quote unquote, are conservatives. What's a conservative anyway? Some of us are Democrats. What's a Democrat? We have no business in that kind of race, except in the African race. That's where we have business. We're not in their race. But Toussaint couldn't understand that. But let me give it to you well. In the beginning, Dessalines was the man, one man, and bookman, who knew that what they were fighting was not to remove the French